We are absolutely, positively uncomfortable on this week's episode of Implicit Bias. And by uncomfortable, I mean in a bad way. I also actually mean it in a really good way. I'm your host, Kavan Bordelon. Welcome into another episode of Implicit Bias. And this week, we are going to challenge you, our listeners, to be uncomfortable with us. Now, what do I mean by that? Why should we be uncomfortable? My wife, the better half of me, the part that I married up to, has a very true saying. And she'll probably actually like that I give her credit for this because this is hers. And all too often, we don't necessarily give credit where credit is due, but we try to do that every week on Implicit Bias. So this week, I'm going to give credit to Mrs. Implicit Bias. She has a great saying. A comfort zone is a great place to live, but nothing ever grows there. And she's absolutely right. That, unfortunately, is also true when you get really, really, really uncomfortable then, that maybe you do actually get up and do something. Tell you a quick story and maybe kind of how we got to where we got here, if you know what I mean. The snowpacalypse, and I mean like snowpack, P-A-C-K, lips, L-I-P-S. The snowpacalypse basically wiped out Lafayette, Louisiana. Oh, in that second, third week of January. It's been nuts. Matter of fact, Acadiana, the entire area, is pretty much still recovering from a blizzard, which is, to be fair to say, highly uncommon and unlikely. Not impossible, but highly improbable in southern Louisiana. Well, it happened. 8 to 10 inches of snow in a 12 to 14 hour period. And let's just say that Cajuns can deal with a lot. 4-degree temperatures overnight with 8 to 10 inches of snow on rooftops and ice in pipes. We'll live, but we're not going to be comfortable. So yeah, on my street, 10 homes, copper pipes, popped like bad balloons. And that means water in homes, which means that, yeah, things for a lot of people have not been great for the last couple of weeks. But in reality, if you take a step back and you really look at it, it's really just an inconvenience. People still have roofs over their head. Most of them have water back by now, if not all of them having water back by now. Power went out briefly, but was never really an issue. So at the end of the day, we are stuck being really, really, really uncomfortable. But as I said, it's not a great place to be. Why? And maybe this goes back to the biblical reason. Because if there's one thing that Jesus never promised us in this life, it's that we wouldn't suffer. As a matter of fact, the one thing that he did promise, to take the affirmative of that statement, it's that we would. But it's in that suffering that we grow. It's in that suffering that we learn. It's in that suffering that we get better. So it hasn't necessarily been fun tearing out carpet and cutting holes in sheetrock to have pipes fixed and tearing rooms apart and moving furniture from room to room and trying to play like an endless game of musical chairs with all these different things that you've got in your house and trying to figure out where it goes. But at the end of the day, you get a lot accomplished. At the end of the day, you get to all those things that you said, man, I need to go purge that room out, and you just never quite get to it. At the end of the day, you figure out that when we are comfortable, when we are fat and happy, that's usually when the bad things happen to us. So don't get like me, fat and happy. Be uncomfortable and learn to be comfortable with it. That's what we're going to do as we continue to try to solve the problems of the world on this week's Implicit Bias. We've got more weekly whiskey for you. We've got a wonderful private barrel from Elijah Craig, from one of our weekly whiskey sponsors. Here somewhere in downtown Lafayette, Louisiana. We've got more coming at you from the Mr. Lester's TSPL, the Top Secret Podcast Lair. We are double fisting it with our priests this week, so they're going to keep us as Catholic and as Christian as we can be, which means we need it. And hopefully, we'll have more for you when you come back with more of this week's episode of Implicit Bias.